Listen to how the mix falls apart when you mute the bass. Do you spend as much time on bass as you do your guitars? My bass videos never do well on YouTube, but bass gives your guitar tone and your whole song its power and size. So let's go through the bass mix to this song. The raw DI sounds like this. So it's a really good bass instrument, and yes, it is programmed, using my favourite bass instrument for this genre, which is punk bass from Submission Audio, and then into my favourite bass plugin for tone, which is the Parallax from Neural DSP. So noticeably, high distortion is off completely, because I want that clankiness, but I don't want that to get really growly and distorted. So the mids are up quite high volume-wise, but they're only distorted a tiny bit, and you had the lows here about the same volume-wise as the mids. And then this post-equalizer here, I've got the 500 Hz boosted slightly also. The idea behind that is to fill the gaps that you're probably going to cut from guitars, because guitars can be quite honky around that area, whereas bass sounds quite good around that area. So this is the raw tone by itself. And then we follow that up with some EQ. This looks kind of wacky, but actually what it started off as is just a high pass filter here. And then this cut around 170 Hz, which would have been some mud. Then we have some cuts here. So the 40 Hz is usually, once I run it through the mastering chain, the low end starts to distort a lot. Then it's usually this 400 Hz that I have to pull back. And then we have this big one at 50, which would have been the low end of the kick is probably being masked. So then I pull that out so I can hear the low end of the kick. I only do that if I need to. I quite like to fill the low end with kick and bass and not necessarily carve out a space for each one. But in certain instances, like this song, I felt that the kick was getting too thin, so I had to make room in the bass. And then this boost here is because the whole track lacked low end, so I brought that up to compensate for these cuts here. Let's hear this EQ on and off. So without being able to hear the low end really accurately, maybe with some decent headphones, you probably didn't hear much difference there. Let me show you what I was cutting so you can get a bit more of a picture of it. This is the 170 cut. And it's dynamic because that first note that you hear is the most problematic one. Let's hear that again. Because that woo noise is just going to mask the clarity of the low end of the bass. Now let's hear what I'm cutting at 50. Now if you heard that, it's just rumble. And a certain amount of rumble in low end is good because it gives it that power. But when that's getting in the way of the kick, you can sacrifice it. The 40, again, same thing, it'll just be rumble. And let's hear what I'm boosting here at 67 Hz, so just below 70 Hz. So that's where the note of the bass is. Hopefully you heard that. So that's what I'm bringing up when I've cut the rumble out, basically. And that's how I got a decent amount of low end without it sort of trampling over the rest of the mix. Followed up by some compression. Slowed the attack down to really get the transient out of it here. Fast release, not quite as fast as I usually go because this track doesn't necessarily have that kind of feel. And this would be to bring the bass up and in your face. So let's hear it off and on. Hear how that really brings the bass forward and gives it some attitude and some grit. That's what that compressor is for. And then followed up by some extra EQ here. I just like this 160 Hz area of the mag EQ. I usually use it for air band, but obviously not going to do that on bass. That's why I've got a boost at 160 and then a boost at 650 here for the mids as well, which I'll keep bringing forward, incrementally bit by bit whilst listening at low volumes until I feel like it's no longer scooped in that area and actually feels full. Let's turn this EQ off and on again as well. So if you can listen past the volume jump, you can hear that sort of mid-range growl come forward, which is what the 650 Hz is doing mostly. But reiterating my point of the video, I want to show you how this bass extends the range of the guitar section. So if I solo the guitars and then bring the bass in, you'll hear it just extend the guitars into the lower octaves and frequency range. And although I've only done a few mixing moves here with the EQ and the compression, they're very purposeful so that they sit with the guitars. You know, I boosted the 500, 650 areas where the guitar doesn't sound great. And if you've seen guitar mixing videos from me, I usually cut around there. So I'm sort of fitting these two together, the bass and the guitar. So let's hear this in action. Just quickly, if you make music like this and need me to mix your next song, then head over to my website, terrybeckleyrecording.com, and get in touch via the contact form. I will get back to you. Now, you may have noticed a second track of bass here for the chorus parts. Now, without repeating myself from the guitar video, which you can go back and watch, I'll link in the description, the guitar tone in the intro is heavy and distorted like this. But the guitars in the pre-chorus and chorus are way less distorted. So I wanted to fill that out a bit more for the chorus and make sure it didn't lose any impact from the verse. That's why we've got this second track of bass here. So I run the DI, the same DI, through this dark glass plugin from Neural DSP on the VDU setting so it's not as, metal. And then I suck the bass and the treble out, but we'll do some more EQ later on to shape it even more. So we're just getting the part of the frequency spectrum that we want to flesh out with this extra track. And the drive is way up. So before we mix it, this is how the tone sounds. And then we whittle that down even further by sucking out the bottom end and the top end. So we're left with this. Remember, it's just meant to fill that area out so that we don't lose any impact when the verse goes into the chorus and the guitars get less distorted. Then phase align it with the original because it is bass, so definitely important to do that so we don't lose or have any holes in our frequency spectrum when we have the second track in. And then this is quite cool here. This ADT plugin, it sort of double tracks the plugin. There's quite a lot of complicated stuff that goes into emulating the, I think it was the Abbey Road, yeah, says it here on the plugin, the Abbey Road famous ADT where the double track was slower, sometimes faster than the original, so it had like a chorusing effect. So the idea with this was just to create a sort of more stereo sounding bass just for this track here, again with the idea of filling it out. So this is how it sounds with the ADT on. Weird, but it will thicken up with the bass. So if we hear them both together, it sounds like this. So with the whole song, it sounds like this. Now that should be super subtle, but I found that the journey between the verse and the chorus, it just wasn't going up a level enough because of the switching up the guitar tones for the chorus. I felt like I was losing a bit of strength. So do go back and watch the guitar video for a more in-depth explanation as to why I use two different tones. The link is in the description. And it's also part of this video mixing series. I truly hope you gained something from this video, and if you did, please check out my other videos on mixing pop punk and emo music. There might be something there for you too. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the next one.